Thank you. I'm just reflecting on the golden age of railways. I don't know. I kind of tentatively put my hand up, and then I think Mona won the argument. I'm persuaded it might not necessarily be the golden age, might be a tarnished silver age perhaps. But in the next few minutes, I'm going to cover off some of my thoughts as to where we are, what we need to do. I will unashamedly put a technical authority flavour on this, but actually with an eye on the national strategy, if that's all right with you. Mainly because I do not want to be trampling all over the narratives for my colleagues who will be following on from me. I think it's really important, though, that we recognise we are a community, and Mona's actually highlighted that really very effectively. So before I get into my presentation proper, I think we might have locked the doors, I joke, maybe not. Hands up if you're a member of the PWI. Proper hands up, come on, hands up. All right, look around. Yeah? Now, you can put your hands down. Now, those who didn't put your hands up a minute ago, put your hands up, please. Okay? Now, those are the people we can't let out of the room until they're joined. Okay? All right. I joke, but it is a great opportunity, and talking to Stuart, I've lost Stuart, he's in the room somewhere. Just a reminder, all Network Rail folk, Network Rail will pay 2 subscriptions. So that PWI can be your either first or second subscription. Bear that in mind. Okay, let's see if this clicker works then. Oh. All right, okay, lovely. Right. So in terms of the theme, what I wanted to talk about is the bigger picture, the costs of safety, performance and sustainability. Stole unashamedly for the themes of the conference. So where are we? Are we in a golden age or is it a tarnished silver age? Well, actually, we've got lots of challenges, haven't we? We know we've got lots of challenges. My team, and some of you will have heard me give a similar narrative. I've condensed this because most of you will have heard some of my material before. But what I wanted to point out is we know we have got a cash-constrained UK PLC, top left. Okay? So the government has to make hard choices. We, as a railway, have to make hard choices as well to make the government's cash, our taxpayers' cash, the settlement for CP7 go as far as possible. Spend that money wisely. And my contention, one of you will have mentioned to me earlier, that we need to revolt in a way. Remember Andrew Haynes' phrase of revolting? We need to just, if we see colleagues spending money on something which is not as important as we think it should be, such as a garden on top of a building, is that a good, good way of spending money? And you know who you are, but I'm not going to mention where and when and how. But I mean, good God, £1.5 million in a garden on top of one of our facilities. Why? Anyway, a challenge that we've got. Go with the data, go with the facts. The cost of undertaking renewals, wholesale of whatever nature, has doubled in the last 10 years or so. That is for a number of good reasons, a number of bad reasons, but it's fact. So we need to try to address that problem. Because not only have we got a cash-constrained renewals budget, we have, our money goes less far than it did 10 years ago. The only way we can solve that is we work together to solve that. And some of our speakers will be talking about that today as well. Climate change. Nice little graphic there. Effectively, we know that we have to be mindful of whatever we change now, upgrade, renew, replace now, it's going to be in the ground 40 years. Climate change is coming towards us, so we need to be mindful what we specify is climate change proof. Makes sense, doesn't it? But the reality is often we are making decisions based on now, cost, cheapest in the ground now. I'm not going to criticise that, but it's a challenge that we've got. We need to balance our decisions about what's best for now to also best and fit for purpose, given that the environmental constraints and factors are changing around us. We've got our asset, because we're doing less renewals, the bottom 2 graphics. Our asset used life is increasing. We can manage that, but we need to understand that's the issue. And the chart in the middle right indicates, based on these are the volumes for CP7 entry, our plan. okay? We know that the volumes of renewals is going to be lower than it was in the last control period. And some of you will be cited that we've got to work the plan harder and harder, and even those volumes are likely to go down. In terms of PIM, the precursor indicator matrix for safety, track is bobbling along. It's the green line. You can barely see it. But actually, track's not such a big problem as maybe some of the other assets, which is why money's been focused over to them. And some of you actually know me, I like to create or collect nice graphics. So try not to pay attention to the monster in the left-hand corner for the second. I'll come to that monster. But what we do is that in the TA, what you will all do in your parts of the business is you want to take your assurance. What are the issues that we've actually got around us? So from a national perspective, the stuff that we're worried about, or the network-wide perspective, is the stuff on the top left. I'm not going to read them all out because that'll be tedious for you, but if you cast your eye over that, some of those things in there will resonate to you, you know? So we've got reliability and performance, we've got the asset sustainability, there's the handback files are in there as well, health and safety files. These are things that we need to get right. These are things which are challenges, but these are not necessarily new challenges. These are challenges that we have to keep managing. What we see is an increase in variations for track, continuously increasing. That's largely an artifact of the inspection and maintenance side of the asset life cycle, where we are having challenges with access, available resources. Something my team are looking at, what we can do to mitigate and manage that. Largely for track renewals. We'll get to the monster in a second. What we see in terms of construction design variations, those variations that we get through are largely around site-specific constraints. It's not necessarily the standard, it's about site-specific constraints. But I recognise the standards framework is a framework. It can be tweaked, improved, and so on, and which is why we've got the standard challenge process and the speed process. So, the monster. Don't let the standard stop you. I don't think you do you? No? But just bear in mind, the door is wide open. If there's something that could be done better, use the processes in front of you. We will listen to those sympathetically and make changes. We will help you with that. So in terms of tailwinds, it's not all doom and gloom. This is where I think maybe it's a tarnished silver age, Mona, at least in the land of track. In terms of the metrics, the health of the asset, it's really, really in pretty good nick. And that's a credit to all of you. And I've said that previously in other events. But we got rail defects, serious rail defects, rail breaks and so on, are pretty much at an all-time low. In fact, are at an all-time low. They are flattening out towards the bottom of the bathtub curve. We can do more to improve that. And it's not just about standards, it's about inspection, techniques, technology, development of various different kinds of assets. Geometry is actually nationally in a really good place as well. We've got more track in good and less track in poor than we've pretty much ever had. That's a counterpoint to the age of the asset. So we're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Also, in terms of performance, we get a lot of hassle and concern around performance, don't we? We do. We absolutely do. But the reality is, when we look at the kind of the microcosm or the lens through what's going on in the track world, for points failures and track asset failures, we have fewer than we've pretty much ever had before. That's a good news story. But the challenge that we've got is the pie chart, and you have to trust me on this. We're standing still because we are a successful railway. We have, it's quite a congested network, so when something does go wrong, the delays rack up massively. So fewer delays but are more painful. Something to recognise that we've actually got. But that still shouldn't take away from the point that we, as a community, are doing a really good job in this space. But we need to do better. So all of that, bad news and mixed news, means we know we've got a greater safety and performance risk, unmitigated risk, but we can manage it. We know, because we manage safety through speed restrictions, largely, we've got a potential increase in speed restrictions if we don't actually get on top of it. We know that the weather resilience and decarbonisation choices that we've got moving forward, massively important, but will become and are more challenging. And we know the cost pressures will only continue. So, this is my thoughts, my team's thoughts, but we need to be better at targeting our interventions, proactive maintenance. What tools have we got to fix the right thing in the right place at the right time? Rather than going for the full spectrum antibiotic and renewing everything, what can we do to be more discerning about targeting those renewals and maintenance interventions? So that leads on to component rather fund renewal. And then there's back to the sustainability, necessity being the mother of invention. In the past, we have been driven largely to putting in new assets, new materials, but we do have stockpiles of serviceable materials. So how do we get better at cascading materials? Between sites, stockpiles, there's a standards challenge there. We can update our standards accordingly, but actually there's a lot about how do we actually consider the renewals process from the removing the track quickly to putting new track back in, but how do we actually reuse those materials? I don't have all the answers there, but it's a challenge that we need to be facing. And then there's a point about the whole life cost and minimum viable product. And I know there'll be people in the room that will disagree with me. I will contend that they should be, actually, if we're doing it right, one and the same thing. We can debate that. So, other little nuggets which I thought would be worthwhile sharing with you. Just check my time. How am I doing for time? Yeah, fine. Other little nuggets I'll just share with you. Running into CP7, given that we've got a cost challenge, are we spending the money, our taxpayers' money, our settlement in the right spaces? A number of different checks and balances needed to be done. So what the exec did is commissioned AECOM to do an independent review on the minimum viable product, and they came out with some very interesting recommendations, largely aligned to what I've already said to you, but I thought I'd just pull out a couple of nuggets for you. And actually the people who did it were some names you'll recognise in there, so extremely experienced, top-class engineers. And they said, in terms of cost saving, that there might be opportunities, around about 38 million around the control period, which around optimising access strategies. That's not just about renewals, it's about maintenance as well. So, it's not a huge amount of money, but there's a opportunity. Fine. One that I'm sure you've already clocked and maybe taken pictures of, some of you. The deferral of some renewals possible. Interesting phrase, but not recommended. Potential of 270 million. And believe it or not, that's exactly what the report says, in brackets, but not recommended. What that really means is if it's a hard choice to be made, if there's a hard choice to be made for the rest of the health of the asset, there is, let's call it an opportunity. It is a hard choice to face. Do we actually trim more cost out of track renewals to enable more money to be spent in other areas? That was a recommendation. From my perspective, looking at the health of the asset in the long term, we know the asset needs updating and renewing. So it needs to be done. The question is when and how we manage those consequences. So I thought I'll take the opportunity of sharing that with you. We've got a couple of the track renewals directors in the room, Brian and Steve. Welcome, guys. I know this is something that you're working at with the team really hard, but it's something that we need to pull together as a community. What are we going to do? How we can actually drive our costs down? And then the maintenance and the functions like mine, managing those consequences and making sure that those are mitigated if we do have to do that. They also said about reusing materials, so I've touched on that. That's really good. Up to 60 million savings. I think that's low. I think there could be more opportunity there. And then there are other strategic opportunities, and that's investing in different, more mechanical plant, modern kit, not just doing what we've done really well in the past, but actually if we were going to reinvent how we do track renewals or even maintenance, what kind of kit would we have for today's railway? Today's railway largely being based around shorter access windows. What does that kit, what does that process look like? So they suggest we need to look in that, and I violently agree with them. And then they talked about investing in measures to assist maintenance engineers and supervisors inspect and maintain the track. You might as well be aware of that. There's lots of clever ways out there. Amit, wave your hand around. Amit, where are you? There you go. Amit, I'll talk about Amit in a minute. Amit, you're doing a spot later, aren't you? Fantastic. So try not to steal your thunder. But there's things that you can do in the renewals world which will have a really positive beneficial effect for the whole life cycle of the assets. And I'll trailblaze Amit's point there. So back to the TA bit. So all of that taken on board. My team have a strategic approach to actually how we're going to deal with all of this. But we can't do this on our own. We're part of that system. So my two network technical heads have identified what their core priorities. 5 priorities. I'm not going to read them out. They're at the top of the screen on the right. We've developed, I've talked about this many times, various challenge statements for the whole of life cycle of the assets. I've got those part of the technology roadmaps. I've had them aligned, or are being aligned to the rail technical strategy, which is curated by the RSSB. I've got my team working at mapping those across. They will be published formally. The RSSB is going to do that for us. There's a little bit more work to be done in that space. But the beauty of doing that, and from the rail technical strategy, is not just from track. Actually, by the way, Mona, it's going to come to a place near you as well, in terms of your discipline. But the whole of the network rail will do this. We'll get it done from the train operators and so on, and we'll be able to see if there's any gaps. So we can actually have a clear way forward. And the DFT is very interested in that as well. Talks about the renewals cost challenge. We'll have to leave that hanging there. R&D prioritised, competency, the decision-making tool Insight, that horrible graphic on the right-hand side, bottom right, you can barely read. It's a really, really good tool, and it's all about taking all of that data, processing it and presenting it in an easy-to-digest way for people to make decisions. Incidentally, there will be a tool in there to help the prioritisation of renewals, which is going to be developed. It's in the process of being developed. Okay. Pause there. So that's the approach in the track and S&C team. There you go. And what I've circled is what the things I think you probably are most interested in from within the renewals community. So we've had some really good results from that process. These 4 are just easy for me to sort of pull out. They are largely on the maintenance side, I'll admit, but by using this kind of thought process, we've identified massive opportunities. So in terms of rail clamps, we can save, in terms of purchasing of materials and actually people's time, around about 2 million a year, by changing the rules about managing rail clamps, all data-driven. All data-driven. It's looking at what we do now, how do we actually improve that? Passing trains over broken crossings, massive performance challenge. So how do we actually provide better guidance to the boys and girls in the front lines to what to do in the case of a problem? We've provided that guidance. We can run trains. Before we would have said put 5 mile an hour on it or even block the line. We're giving guidance to run up to 20 miles an hour. Oops. So that's helping. Track buckles, very, very similar. Okay, it only happens generally in hot weather, but the rules previously said block the line until a competent engineer can go and have a look at them. We've provided guidance for the MOMs and for the track engineers to actually run it at 5 or 20 miles an hour, depending on the severity of the misalignment or the geometry issue. And then 1B defects, I don't know how much you all know about 1B defects, but 1B defect is a term which covers a multitude of defects. So being more discerning about the severity of those defects, we can give better guidance to people to actually prioritise and manage how we deal with those. So those, yes, are in the land of maintenance, but closer to your world, and this is where I don't want to steal too many people's thunder, but Amit, wave your hand around again. There's Amit, digital speed boards, you're going to talk about them. Brilliant idea. We just need to put our shoulders behind that and get those rolled out. And then Nick, where's Nick? Next to Amit, there you go. That strange-looking sleeper. You're talking about that later, are you? Yeah, okay. Brilliant. And there's also a video I'm sure Nick will tell you to watch as well. It's really good. Nick's going to become a movie star. He's waxing lyrical about that. The other picture, NR60 Mark II. we have lots of hard-working assets on high category lines, NR56. I exhort you, I know we've got a cost challenge, I exhort you, whenever we're doing a renewal on Cat 1 and Cat 1A, potentially even Cat 2 track, we should be putting NR60 Mark II in. It will perform at the right level for the asset area. It'll also last longer. That's what we need to be doing. And it is not a vast amount more expensive than the NR56 versions. Speed initiatives, the whole list there. So the speed is working. There's more opportunities out there. I need you to help us identify those opportunities, and we'll grind away and work at them. And I've listed out a few other ideas that are in play. So I think blended ballast has been talked about today. Yes? Somebody say yes, John. Yes, John. Fantastic. An interesting point is to put on your radar. Let's be controversial. Who's worked in maintenance? Hands up, please. Okay. Now leave your hand up, leave your hands up, leave your hands up. Now, who in your days in maintenance had a steel sleeper renewal which was put on a location which it would never have been, should never have been? Oh, not so many. There's a few. I had some bloody terrible steel sleeper renewals on some of my sites. Put your hands down. But actually, what have I done? I've done something there. Oh, hang on. Here we go. The format has changed on the screen. But I've asked my team, we're going to look at where and how we're going to use steel sleepers. There's a potential cost opportunity there. Place near you, it's coming, but it's something we're going to think about what that actually looks like, potentially. And then, Brian, I think you're talking about the cost maturity model. That's a huge and brilliant idea. We need to get behind that. Undersleeper pads. There's opportunities for using undersleeper pads for not having to put in lateral resistant end plates. There's also long-term asset life opportunities. And then, are we taking best opportunity of line speed handbacks or even putting temporary clamps in up to 60 miles an hour, some stuff that Central Alliance has done? There's loads and loads of opportunities. This is the law of incremental returns. We're not going to have one big opportunity to deliver cheaper, better, more cost-effective renewals, but we have to have an eye on the prize. How do we do what we're doing, as well as we're doing, do it better, do it more cheaply, more cost-effectively, because we're the stewards of the asset. We're doing a really good job, you're doing a really good job, but we need to do better. And that is it. Thank you very much.